military fences and guarded by armed soldiers since 1964, there stands the remains of what should have been one of Egypt's greatest monuments, the unfinished northern pyramid of Zawyet El-Aryan. Unlike any other abandoned construction in Egypt, this pyramid was not left incomplete due to lack of resources or political instability. The granite work found in its depths displays a level of precision that surpasses even the Great Pyramid itself. Something extraordinary happened here over 4,000 years ago. Something that caused the most skilled builders in the ancient world to simply walk away from their greatest project. Gaston Maspero, the legendary director of Egyptian antiquities, descended into its shaft in 1905 and emerged visibly shaken. His hands trembled as he wrote his report. He described an awe-inspiring shock, unlike anything he had experienced at any other site in Egypt. The perfection of the cuts and joints, the peerless finish of the granite, everything came together to compose something that defied explanation. Maspero wrote that nowhere else in Egypt was the power and mastery of the ancient architects so suddenly and strongly obvious. He had spent his entire career studying pyramids, temples, and tombs. He had seen the finest work that ancient Egypt had produced. Yet nothing had prepared him for what lay at the bottom of the Zawyet El-Aryan shaft. This was something different. This was something that should not exist. Christopher Dunn, the renowned engineer and author of the Giza power plant, spent decades analyzing Egyptian stonework with modern precision instruments. His measurements revealed something that mainstream archaeology has struggled to explain. The granite surfaces at Giza and other ancient sites are finished to tolerances of 1/100th of an inch. This is precision that requires advanced machinery to achieve today. Yet according to conventional history, the ancient Egyptians possessed only copper tools and stone hammers. Dunn's analysis led him to a revolutionary conclusion. The pyramids were not tombs. They were sophisticated technological devices designed to harness Earth's vibrational energy through acoustic resonance. The chambers and passages were positioned with deliberate precision to maximize acoustical properties, to amplify frequencies, to accomplish tasks that we are only beginning to understand. The mystery at Zawyet El-Aryan deepens when we examine the inscriptions discovered during excavations. Alessandro Barsanti, the Italian archaeologist who explored the site between 1904 and 1912, recorded 67 inscriptions in black and red ink on the chamber walls. They documented the names of different workmen crews and revealed something extraordinary. The planned name of the pyramid complex was Seba-Ka. In ancient Egyptian, this translates to the Star of Ka, a name that connects this unfinished monument directly to the heavens. Robert Bauval, in his groundbreaking work, The Orion Mystery, demonstrated that the ancient Egyptians had a profound connection to the stars that went far beyond simple observation. The three pyramids of Giza are positioned to precisely mirror the three stars of Orion's belt. The alignment is not approximate. It is exact, intentional, undeniable. Bauval proposed that the ancient Egyptians built these monuments as a reflection of their cosmic origins, a map pointing to the source from which their divine rulers descended. The pyramid texts, the oldest religious writings in human existence, carved into the walls of pyramids over 4,000 years ago, speak explicitly of the pharaoh's soul ascending to Orion after death. These texts describe Orion not merely as a destination, but as an origin. The divine kings came from the stars, and to the stars they would return. A pyramid named the Star of Ka takes on profound significance in this context. This was not merely a tomb for a mortal king. This was a monument intended to connect Earth to the heavens, to honor beings whose origins lay among the stars. And according to the inscriptions, those beings had names that appear nowhere else in Egyptian history. Neb-Kara, meaning Lord of the Ka of Ra. Neb-Hedjet Nal-Ubi, meaning Lord of the Golden Crown. Rulers who have been erased from every other record. Who were these forgotten kings? Why were their names preserved only in this abandoned shaft? And why was the pyramid that would honor them never completed? If you find these mysteries as fascinating as we do, consider subscribing to this channel. We explore the unexplained connections between ancient civilizations and the profound questions about human origins that mainstream history refuses to address. Join us on this journey into the unknown. Zecharia Sitchin spent his career translating ancient Sumerian texts that mainstream academia refused to take seriously. His work, beginning with the 12th planet and continuing through the Stairway to Heaven and the Wars of Gods and Men, presented evidence that challenged everything we thought we knew about human origins. According to Sitchin's translations, the gods of ancient mythology were not supernatural beings. They were the Anunnaki, advanced beings from another world who came to Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago. Sitchin's translations described how the Anunnaki established civilization in Mesopotamia and Egypt, teaching humanity agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, and architecture. They were not immortal gods, but long-lived beings who eventually aged, weakened, and died when separated too long from their home world. They needed specific conditions to survive on Earth, conditions that became increasingly difficult to maintain as centuries passed. The Egyptian gods, known as the Neteru, may have been the same beings that the Sumerians called Anunnaki. The Turin King List, an ancient papyrus documenting the rulers of Egypt, does not begin with human pharaohs. It begins with a succession of gods who reigned for thousands of years before human civilization emerged. These divine rulers, according to the papyrus, established the foundations upon which all subsequent Egyptian culture was built. Manetho, the Egyptian priest who wrote the definitive history of his nation for Greek audiences in the 3rd century before the Common Era, similarly described epochs of divine rule preceding human dynasties. His Egyptiaca listed gods, demigods, and spirits of the dead who governed Egypt for over 20,000 years before the first human pharaoh took the throne. At the bottom of the Zawyet El-Aryan shaft, Barsanti discovered something that has puzzled researchers for over a century. Resting on the perfectly polished granite floor was an oval-shaped vessel carved from a single block of stone. Unlike anything found at other Egyptian sites, this vessel was sealed. When Barsanti attempted to examine its contents, he found unidentified substances that crumbled to dust upon exposure to air. The samples were collected, but subsequently lost. What was inside that vessel has never been determined. The Edfu building texts, inscribed on the walls of the Temple of Horus at Edfu, describe a time before the current age of humanity. They speak of the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, divine beings who came to Egypt in the distant past and established sacred sites along the Nile. These beings possessed knowledge that they passed to human initiates, knowledge that allowed the construction of monuments that have endured for millennia. Graham Hancock, in his works Fingerprints of the Gods and Magicians of the Gods, compiled evidence suggesting that an advanced civilization existed in prehistory, a civilization that was largely destroyed in a global cataclysm around 12,000 years ago. The survivors, according to Hancock, traveled the world teaching the fundamentals of civilization to scattered human populations. In Egypt, these teachers became known as gods. Their monuments became temples. Their knowledge became religion. What if the builders at Zawyet El-Aryan were among the last of these ancient teachers? What if they died before they could complete their final monument? Since 1964, no researcher has been permitted to return to Zawyet El-Aryan. The Egyptian military constructed a base directly on top of the ancient necropolis. The shaft that Barsanti explored is now reportedly used as a refuse dump. Whatever secrets remain buried beneath those sands may never be recovered. The oval vessel with its mysterious contents has never been analyzed with modern technology. The 67 inscriptions have never been fully translated. And the question of why the most skilled builders in ancient history abandoned their most ambitious project remains officially unanswered. But in the autumn of 2019, 4,000 miles away in the Scottish Highlands, a 4-year-old boy began to remember. Callum McLeod lived with his parents in a modest home on the outskirts of Inverness. His father, Douglas, worked as a boat mechanic at a marina on the Moray Firth, spending his days repairing engines and propellers. His mother, Fiona, was a nurse at Regmore Hospital, caring for patients through long shifts. They were a practical family rooted in the tangible world. There were no books about ancient history on their shelves, no documentaries about Egypt playing on their television, no reason whatsoever for their son to know anything about pyramids or pharaohs or beings from the stars. It started with drawings, simple shapes that Fiona initially assumed were mountains, like the peaks they could see from their kitchen window. But the triangles became more detailed with each passing day. Callum added lines extending from the bases, pathways leading underground. He drew stick figures descending into darkness. He drew larger figures standing apart from the others, watching, directing, pointing at the sky. When Fiona asked what he was drawing, Callum looked up at her with an expression she had never seen before. His eyes seemed older somehow, carrying a weight that no 4-year-old should possess. "We were building it," he said. "But we did not finish. They died before we could finish." Fiona felt a chill despite the warmth of the kitchen. She asked who died, expecting a childish answer about cartoon characters or imaginary friends. Callum returned to his drawing without hesitation. "The tall ones," he said. "The ones with the long heads. They got sick, and they died. And we did not know how to finish without them." His crayon continued moving, adding elongated figures to the scene. Brien Foerster has spent years researching elongated skulls found at archaeological sites around the world. His work in Peru documented specimens from the Paracas culture that appear to have cranial volumes significantly larger than normal human skulls. Some of these skulls, according to Foerster's analysis, show characteristics suggesting they were naturally elongated rather than artificially deformed through binding practices. Similar elongated skulls have been discovered in Egypt, particularly from the Amarna period. The royal family of that era, including Pharaoh Akhenaten, Queen Nefertiti, and their daughters, are consistently depicted with elongated heads in all surviving artwork. Mainstream Egyptologists attribute this to artistic convention. But what if the elongated skulls were not artistic choices at all, but accurate representations of a different lineage entirely? Over the following weeks, Callum's descriptions became increasingly detailed. He spoke of granite that sang when you touched it, stones that hummed with frequencies that could be felt in your chest. He described chambers designed to capture sound, to amplify vibrations until they could speak to the sky. He said the tall ones taught the workers how to listen to the stone, how to find the notes that would make the blocks light enough to move. Christopher Dunn's research supports exactly what Callum was describing. In the Giza power plant, Dunn proposed that the ancient Egyptians used acoustic technology to accomplish feats that seem impossible by conventional means. The precise chambers and passages within the pyramids, according to Dunn, were designed to resonate at specific frequencies. A child in Scotland was describing the same principles that an engineer had spent 20 years developing through scientific analysis. Callum mentioned a star that the tall ones watched constantly, a star they said was home. They would stand on the roof of the building place at night, he said, and look at the same spot in the sky. They said their brothers were waiting there. They said one day they would go back. When Douglas showed Callum a star map application on his phone, curious about his son's celestial fixation, the boy immediately pointed to a cluster of stars without hesitation. "There," he said firmly. "That is where they came from. That is where they wanted to go back to." He was pointing directly at Orion. A 4-year-old boy who had never been taught about constellations had identified the same stellar region that Robert Bauval connected to the pyramids through years of scholarly research. Fiona began keeping a detailed journal of everything Callum said. She recorded dates, exact quotes, the contexts in which he spoke. She photographed his drawings and organized them chronologically. Looking back at those early journal entries, what strikes researchers most is how casually Callum spoke about impossible things. He did not present his memories as extraordinary or special. To him, they were simply facts, as unremarkable as the color of the sky or the wetness of water. The tall ones came from the stars. They taught humans how to build. They got sick and died. These statements carried no drama, no embellishment, no seeking of attention. They were delivered with the matter-of-fact certainty of direct experience. In December of 2019, Callum made a statement that changed everything for his family. He was playing with wooden blocks, building a tower, when he suddenly stopped and looked at his mother with tears welling in his eyes. His small hands trembled. "They are still in there," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We sealed them in when they died. We thought we were protecting them, but now nobody can find them." Fiona knelt beside her son and gently asked what he meant. Callum pointed at his tower of blocks as if it explained everything. "Under the ground," he said, "where we were building. There is a room, and they are inside. Their bodies are inside. But nobody is allowed to go there anymore. Men with weapons keep everyone away." That night, after Callum was asleep, Fiona sat at her computer and typed 3 words into a search engine. Unfinished Pyramid Egypt. She was not expecting to find anything meaningful. She was certainly not expecting to find Zawyet El-Aryan. The photographs stopped her cold. The massive shaft descending into bedrock, the perfect granite floor, the sealed oval vessel, and most disturbingly, the military base that has prevented any research since 1964. Fiona read about the 67 inscriptions, the mysterious royal names, the planned pyramid name of Seba-Ka, the Star of Ka. She remembered what Callum had said about figures who came from the stars. Her hands were shaking as she closed her laptop. She showed the photographs to Callum the next morning without explanation. She simply placed her phone on the breakfast table and watched. Callum glanced at the screen and his face went pale. "That is it," he whispered. "That is where we were building. But it is wrong now. Someone put other buildings on top. Why did they do that? Why did they cover it up?" Fiona asked her son to describe what he remembered about the site. Callum spoke for nearly 20 minutes without pause, his small voice carrying details that a 4-year-old could not possibly know. He described the T-shaped shaft and the descending passage. He spoke of granite blocks that weighed more than any human crew could lift. Blocks that the tall ones moved with sound, with vibration, with frequencies that made the stone weightless. He described the oval vessel and said it contained something sacred. something the Tall Ones brought from their home. Medicine, he called it. Medicine that helped them survive in our air. But the medicine ran out, and they got sick, and they died, and we sealed them inside because we did not know what else to do. Zecharia Sitchin, in The Stairway to Heaven, wrote extensively about the possibility that extraterrestrial beings required specific substances to survive on Earth. The Sumerian texts he translated described the Anunnaki consuming a substance that prolonged their lives and maintained their health in an alien environment. When that substance became unavailable, they weakened and eventually perished. A 4-year-old in Scotland was describing the same scenario. Before we continue with Callum's story, we want to hear from you. Have you or someone you know ever experienced memories of a past life? Have children in your family ever spoken about places or events they could not possibly have known? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be featured in a future video. Fiona reached out to researchers who study past life memories in children. She was cautious, protective of her son, unwilling to expose him to ridicule or exploitation. The researcher she eventually contacted was Dr. Helena Marlowe, a psychologist based in Edinburgh who had spent 15 years documenting children who appeared to remember previous lives. Dr. Marlowe had developed protocols for interviewing children without leading them, for testing their memories against verifiable facts, for separating genuine recall from imagination and suggestion. Dr. Marlowe visited the McLeod family in February of 2020. She interviewed Callum multiple times over 3 days, using techniques designed to let the child speak freely without adult interference. What she recorded during those sessions would later be described as some of the most detailed testimony she had encountered in her career. Callum spoke of the construction process in terms that matched no documentary or book intended for children. He described the quarrying of granite at a location upstream, the transport of blocks by water, the careful positioning using measurements that had to be exact, or the structure would not work. He spoke of the Tall Ones as teachers, as overseers, as beings who possessed knowledge that humans were only beginning to understand. They did not look like us, he said. Their heads were different, long, like this. He traced his hands backward from his forehead, indicating an elongated skull. Their eyes were bigger. They could see things we could not see. And their skin was not like ours. It was pale, almost blue sometimes. They said our sun was too bright for them. Brien Foerster's research on elongated skulls has documented specimens with unusual physical characteristics beyond just cranial shape. Some skulls show evidence of different bone structure, different weight, different composition than normal human remains. Foerster has suggested that these skulls may represent a distinct population, perhaps even a different species entirely. Dr. Marlowe asked Callum about the day the construction stopped. The boy's demeanor changed instantly. His playful energy faded. He became still, quiet, burdened. They were coughing, he said. At first, just a little, then more. The medicine was not working anymore. They tried to make more, but they could not. The stars were in the wrong place, they said. They needed to wait, but they did not have time to wait. They got weaker and weaker, and then they could not get up anymore. According to Callum, the human workers did not know what to do when the Tall Ones fell ill. The construction had been proceeding according to a plan that only the Tall Ones fully understood. The humans were skilled, capable of incredible stonework under direction, but they did not possess the knowledge to continue alone. When the last of the Tall Ones died, the human overseers made a decision. They would seal the chamber. They would place the bodies of the Tall Ones inside the oval vessel, surrounded by whatever remained of their medicine. They would cover the shaft and leave the site as a memorial to those who had come from so far away to help humanity build. "We thought they would come back," Callum said. "They're brothers in the sky. We thought they would come and take them home. So we left signs. We wrote their names on the walls. We called the pyramid the Star so their brothers would know where to look. But nobody came. Nobody ever came." The inscriptions at Zawyet El-Aryan include references to stars and celestial bodies that have puzzled researchers for over a century. The name Seba-Ka, Star of Ka, suggests a connection to heavenly realms that goes beyond typical Egyptian religious symbolism. A 4-year-old in Scotland was describing the same narrative preserved in the oldest Egyptian records. Dr. Marlowe continued her investigation for several months, returning to Inverness multiple times to document Callum's ongoing memories. The boy's recall remained consistent, with details that he repeated identically across sessions separated by weeks. He never contradicted himself, never embellished, never showed signs of confabulation or fantasy. When presented with images of Egyptian sites he had not previously seen, he correctly identified some and rejected others with confidence. He recognized the shaft at Zawyet El-Aryan instantly, but showed no recognition of the Valley of the Kings or Abu Simbel. His memories were specific to one location, one construction project, one group of beings who died before their work was complete. In the summer of 2020, Callum made his most startling statement yet. He was looking at his mother's phone at a satellite image of the Giza plateau when he traced his finger to a spot between the pyramids and the Nile. "There is another one," he said, "under the sand. The tall ones built that one first to practice, but it is deeper. Nobody has found it because they are looking in the wrong place." Fiona asked what he meant by another one. Callum shrugged as if the answer were obvious. "Another pyramid. A small one. They built it to test the sounds before building the big ones. It worked, but the sounds were not loud enough, so they made the big ones instead. The small one is still there. It is full of their things, their tools, their writings, everything they brought from home." Robert Schoch, the geologist who redated the Sphinx based on water erosion patterns, has argued that significant structures remain buried beneath the sands of Egypt, structures that may predate the acknowledged timeline of Egyptian civilization by thousands of years. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of the Giza Plateau have detected numerous anomalies that have never been excavated. Graham Hancock has compiled evidence suggesting that what we see today in Egypt represents only a fraction of what once existed. A 4-year-old describing hidden structures built by beings from the stars was adding his voice to a chorus of researchers who believe the full story of ancient Egypt has yet to be told. As of this recording, the unfinished pyramid of Zawyet El-Aryan remains closed to researchers. The military base that covers the site shows no signs of relocation. The oval vessel that Barsanti discovered over a century ago, with its unidentified contents that crumbled to dust, has never been properly analyzed with modern technology. The 67 inscriptions naming mysterious rulers and connecting the site to the stars have never been fully translated or explained. And the question of why the most skilled builders in ancient history abandoned their most ambitious project remains officially unanswered. Callum McLeod is now 8 years old. His memories of the construction site have faded, as past life memories in children typically do once they reach school age. He no longer speaks of the tall ones or the granite that sang. He no longer draws pyramids or elongated figures pointing at the stars. When asked about his earlier statements, he shrugs and says he does not remember. "It was like a dream," he told Dr. Marlowe during their final session. "I remember that I remembered, but I do not remember what I remembered anymore." Fiona McLeod preserved all of her son's drawings, all of her journal entries, all of Dr. Marlowe's recordings. She does not know what to make of what happened. She does not claim that her son genuinely remembered a past life. She only knows what he said and what she found when she investigated. She only knows that a 4-year-old boy with no exposure to Egyptian history described a site that matches Zawyet El-Aryan with impossible accuracy. She only knows that he spoke of beings with elongated skulls who came from the stars, beings who died before their work was finished, beings whose bodies may still lie sealed in a chamber beneath a military base in Egypt. Zecharia Sitchin believed that the Anunnaki would one day return to Earth. Robert Bauval believes that the pyramids encode a message meant for future generations. Graham Hancock believes that we are a species with amnesia, that we have forgotten our true origins and our true potential. Christopher Dunn believes that the technology of the ancients could solve our modern energy crisis if we could only understand how it worked. Brien Foerster believes that elongated skulls represent evidence of a lost lineage that once walked among us. These researchers come from different backgrounds, different disciplines, different parts of the world, but they all share one conviction: the official story of human history is incomplete. Something is missing. Something has been hidden or forgotten or deliberately suppressed. We will never know what truly happened at Zawyet El-Aryan over 4,000 years ago. We will never know why the most precise stonework in Egypt was abandoned before the pyramid even began. We will never know what the oval vessel contained or why it was sealed. We will never know if the bodies of the tall ones still lie beneath the military base, waiting for brothers who never came. But sometimes, in the quiet of a Scottish evening, Fiona McLeod looks at her son's old drawings and wonders. She wonders about the inscriptions that named the pyramid the Star of Ka. She wonders about the beings with elongated skulls who appear in Egyptian art. She wonders about the children around the world who speak of lives they could not have lived, places they could not have seen, knowledge they could not have learned. And she wonders if somewhere in the universe there are others who remember what we have forgotten, others who know the truth about where we came from and why we build toward the stars. Perhaps one day the gates around Zawyet El-Aryan will open. Perhaps researchers will finally descend into the shaft and examine what remains. Perhaps they will find the oval vessel and analyze its contents with technology that did not exist in Barsanti's time. Perhaps they will discover a sealed chamber containing something extraordinary, something that confirms or denies the impossible story that a 4-year-old boy in Scotland remembered for a few brief years before forgetting forever. Until that day, the mystery remains. The Star of Ka waits in silence, and the tall ones, if they exist at all, lie in darkness where they fell, beneath a pyramid that was never finished, on a world that was never their home. What do you believe? What do the stars remember? And what secrets are still waiting to be found? If this story moved you, if it made you question what you thought you knew about ancient history and human origins, share this video with others who seek the truth. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our explorations into the mysteries that mainstream science cannot explain. Leave a comment telling us what you think really happened at Zawyet El-Aryan. And remember, the past is not as distant as we believe. Sometimes it speaks through the most unexpected voices. Sometimes it remembers through those who were never supposed to know.